Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss American Pie presents The Naked Mile. And not Beta House, that's next week. That was my fault last week. But this time, starring Eugene Levy, Christopher McDonald, John White, Jesse Schramm, Steve Talley, Ross Thomas, and Jake Siegel, and directed by Joe Nussbaum, or Bam, whatever that name is. Please forgive me. So let's just get straight into this movie because I've seen advertisements, but I don't even know what it's supposed to be about, honestly. So let's get into it. We get Eric Stifler, played by John White, faking his sickness in order to watch some porno while his parents go out for brunch with the granny, and they forgot the coupons of the house and catch Eric masturbating on the porno. And did we need this opening scene? Well, sort of, because we learn Granny dies from what she saw, and Eric explains he's not like any other Stifler, but his friends Coos, played by Jake Siegel, and Ryan, played by Ross Thomas, are. Despite he's clumsy, he still has a girlfriend that keeps going out with him, named Tracy, played by Jesse Schramm, who can't have sex for for that reason he's a virgin, and so is she. And for Stifler, graduating as a virgin is a very bad thing, and I can connect with him as a Stifler more than Matt, or we'll see his cousin Dwight later in the film. And I'm not sure until we get there, because he sort of has charisma, but not as much as Sean William Scott, who acts like the Stifler we know from the first movie. Coos and Ryan talk to Dwight and tell Eric about a party he's having at his college in Michigan at the Naked Mile race. Or called that, I'll say. That goes on annually, and Mr. and Mr. Stifler are excited about Eric going to visit Dwight, aka his cousin. And Mr. Stifler, played by Christopher McDonald, says look up to Dwight as a Stifler, which was kind of amusing. Meanwhile, Tracy wants to have sex with Eric as he comes over, and they sort of had sex if it weren't for Tracy's dad coming downstairs for a drink, and Eric takes a dump in their dryer. And I'm not laughing at this because it is again not that funny, but I was amused by Mr. Stifler's advice about Dwight, but this isn't as funny as the first American Pie film. Eric goes to Ryan's place to save himself from the cops, and again, I'm not fucking laughing whatsoever. Tracy gives Eric a hall pass for the weekend while at the Naked Mile, and a hall pass, in case if anybody doesn't know what that is when Eric has sex with another woman and she'll accept it with no consequences whatsoever. And her friends Brooke and Natalie are thinking, is she out of her fucking mind? As she calls Eric about not accepting the hall pass or trying to decline it or whatever that line was. Ryan throws out Eric's cell phone, and Jim's dad, returned by Eugene Levy, has a brief talk with Tracy about the weekend at the Naked Mile and her hall pass to Eric, and I do like seeing Eugene Levy back as he's the good presence. Eric takes a leak outside of the car, and Ryan rolls down the window to let Coos taste Eric's piss, which isn't making me laugh. They arrive at the Beta House as we see Dwight Stifler, played by Steve Talley, plays the drinking game with a contestant who doesn't finish the game and vomits on a girl as Dwight wins, and Dwight is like any fucking Stifler in these movies, and that's not a good thing for me. They play football with midgets, and they play rather fucking roughly, so don't judge them. Led by Rock, who bit a chunk out of Dwight's thigh, and the football game begins, and I'm not having as good a time with this football scene as I am with the gay bar in American Wedding. Eric bumps into Brandy as she spills her drink on Eric accidentally, and she dries his shirt while Kuz and Ryan talk briefly with Jill and Alexis, who are Brandy's friends, by the way, while Rock cheats on his girlfriend and treats her like shit. Eric walks Brandy home, and the next day, Eric is thinking about running the Naked Mile as he tells Coos and Ryan about Brandy, the sorority girl, and calls Tracy to say hello. And after the phone call, Eric sits on the bench next to Jim's dad because of the Naked Mile, and he and Eric talk about the hall pass. He brings up Jim and Nadia before Jim ever was married to Michelle in an American Wedding. And Dwight gets jumped by Rock and his team of midgets. And I like the scene with Jim's dad and Eric, but the rest of these scenes are pretty bad. Dwight talks with Eric about his virginity problem, and I did like that scene as he tells the brief story of how the Stifler family are who they are. It was a brief moment. If it was a brief moment, was good acting, but it's not saying much. Eric, Coos, and Ryan decide to run the Naked Mile after Brandy and Alexis and Jill take off their clothes, and Dwight shows up from the hospital, and they start running the Naked Mile after Jim's dad shoots the gun in the sky. And after running the Naked Mile, Tracy sees Eric on the TV kissing Brandy, and Brooke and Natalie tell Tracy to go to a party, and she's depressed because of that. And she goes while Eric doesn't want to have sex with Brandy, but loves Tracy as she's about to make love with her ex-boyfriend Trent. While Eric drives the car they came with and runs out of gas and finds a horse to ride to Tracy's place and Allison's party, which is where she's at. And he says to Tracy he doesn't want to have a hall pass and he loves her, and she hears while Eric thinks he was talking to her through the door. And it was someone else, which is embarrassing, by the way. And Eric comes back with the car and breakfast to his friends, and they drive back home as Dwight had sex with Rock's girlfriend and videotapes it. And this climax is not great, but it's alright. Not quite as good as American Wedding, I should say. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 4.0 out of 10. Not as bad as American Pie 2 and Bandcamp, but not as good as the first American Pie or American Wedding. I could connect with Eric more than any of the other Stiflers except for Steve, but Eric is second best compared to Steve. Unfortunately, I can't recommend this to anybody as it doesn't make me laugh, but it has one amusing scene, and that was at the beginning, but that's it. It still doesn't work for me as well as the first film, in my opinion. So next week, I will be back with American Pie Presents Beta House, and that's going to be the correct one this time. So until next time, this one time at the Naked Mile,